IMHO Talk Show.
As promised, we are joined by none other than another very, very special guest. So tell a friend, tell a friend.
That's right.
Hashtag IMHO Talk Show. Because you got the Honorable, she know how to introduce her, the Honorable Nikuyah J. Walker. And not only that, but she promised us and she delivered per usual, as she does in her fashion. She said she had something big for us. It had an announcement, and the news would be broke right here on your, in my humble opinion, talk show. So we definitely appreciate her for always trusting us,
coming through
with her, with her conversation and trusting us to properly relay the info to the community.
Right.
And so that's why it gives us pleasure to introduce her and some of her board members for a new activist organization called From the Imagination of Our Ancestors. And they have a definite worthwhile agenda to continue the work of activism and representation of our community. So without further ado, Nikuyah, good afternoon to you.
Hello. How's my sound?
That's right. Oh, great. Sound good. And and what we'll do is we'll do like a little round robin. And I know we have some other board members joining as well, but as of right now, we have you and Jay Sean on. So little check, Jay Sean, you can hear us clearly. It looks like your mic is muted, but just want to make sure you're good.
Yeah, do I sound all right?
You sound great, my brother. Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Yeah. And I saw Danyelle. So did she get disconnected?
It looks like Danyelle it dropped off. But if y'all want to text her or something, let her know she can hop back on. I'm not sure. She may have gotten pulled away. But but thank y'all for joining us once again on these 101 Jams airwaves to talk about Mayor, what you've been up to and how you are continuing to be an impact and an advocate and an activist. So give us the background on what you've been working on here.
Yeah. So here, a new nonprofit, which I was very hesitant to add because you all know how many nonprofits we have in this area, and really trying to figure out what my next moves were going to be here, how I could still, be of service. And it has taken me over 2 years to even make the decision. And then we're still as a board trying to narrow down exactly what we're going to do, but it's from the imagination of our ancestors. As you saw on the website, clear as day, an activist organization anchored in advocacy, and that's our starting point. We have 7 areas. The education, economics, criminal legal reform, health, housing, local government with the focus on Charlottesville and Albemarle County, and time served individuals. And those 7 areas will be areas that are focal point where people need assistance and they come to us. We will assist them in navigating and making sure that they experience fair and just services in those 7 areas. But I'll also be going above and beyond that and presenting to people, either organizations, individuals, or both of those city governments, what they could do better in those areas.
Oh, nice. So can we start with the title? We can all make our fair assumption as to what that it means, right? But I also think there's some power. It's obviously some power in words. But for an individual to have to repeat that every time they come to talk about your nonprofit,
we need an acronym. Is what she's saying.
But there's say that, from the imagination of our ancestors. So, if you don't mind, Nikuyah, could you kind of give us the background for your thought process in the name of your nonprofit?
Yeah, so the potential of nonprofit, walking through this community over the past 2 years, trying to heal from my time as mayor, there were a lot of names that popped up. This name just stuck with me. I was doing some genealogy work last year and ancestors. That's where the ancestors came from. I saw my grandmother on a census as a 7-year-old, and that just stuck with me like every day. And then I was actually watching one of the Color Purple interviews, and they talked about the director talked about being able to give Celie an imagination. And I thought Celie had an imagination. I thought Alice would that, but I'm like, okay. And so Ancestors and Imagination just played, and it just kept playing. And then one day I'm like, is this supposed to be the name? And right, like around that time, from the desk of the CEO or from the CEO's desk also popped into my mind. So then I started playing around with those two names. From the imagination of our ancestors is what we landed on, and the board spent some time with that too. But how powerful is it to think about not the current condition you're in, but even people who had been in bondage before and been subjugated to these same type of conditions? Like, can we think back to what they imagined for us, what they prayed for us? And so, yes, your current condition may not be ideal, but if you go back to that, somebody's already imagined something greater for you and prayed for something greater for you. And can we, even no matter what you're going through today, can we work from that space that it can be better? And that somebody is going to be here to help you navigate and help you fight for it to be better is where that name came.
Gotcha. Like that. Yeah. So Nikuyah, as you mentioned, you assembled a team.
Yes.
So go ahead and let us know who's on this said team.
Oh, I got a fire team, and I know a couple of them text me and said they were running late, so hopefully they'll get here and be able to say. But we have Mr. Johnson on here with us. He's our youngest board member, and our board members range from their 80s with Dr. Harris to our 18-year-old. Okay. And so, people thought it was just like insane. We have 10 board members on there. But you all know me well enough to know that I welcome the transparency and I welcome the accountability, and actually a team to hold me accountable and hold each other accountable. And that's exactly what we have here. So Danyelle Honoré was just on here. She was in the community a few years ago at UVA, and she's now in Texas temporarily in law school. But she did a lot of activism with us here, and she actually strengthened the UVA community, try to bridge that divide in a way that very few have on their time at UVA. And so she's on here. Again, I said law school, so we get, that legal perspective, but she's also powerful in, education, understand race, racism, and those relationships that we need to either mend, bridge, burn. And so he's here. Chief Brackney, Rashall Brackney, I still have a hard time. That's all I've ever. So that's what she. But Chief Brackney is the board president, and so we have criminal legal reform and time served individual as two of our areas, and that is her expertise. But also, while she was here, she showed that she had a commitment to trying to dismantled as much as she could of within policing. And so that's just still, we're not talking about enough. We still see that those conversations that we were very open to with when George Floyd was murdered, Sonia Massey was just assassinated in her kitchen. And you don't even hear as much about that today. And I'm not going to get off on a tangent for that, but it's still a very necessary conversation. And all the reforms that we have hoped for years. I know when the first person that was murdered that broke my heart was Tamir Rice. And not just like I ignored everyone else, but that just stayed with me.
Right.
So intently, that I just could not let it go. And so we know we need those. We see Charlottesville reverting back to former practices. And I have a ton of stories I can share there, but that's why she's there. We have Dr. Leah Henry on the board member. She was just the chair of the Housing Authority Board. She's a public housing resident. She raised her kids in, the community. She came to this community as a student at the University of Virginia. And our website makes it clear that we are here to serve and honor and help Black people remember what you deserve, who you are, and to fill our lives with Black joy, as it says on there. And so she has like eternal commitment, to that. Angela Johnson is the vice president. Angela is well known in the community. Peaches, everybody talks to Angela, knows Angela. She's trusted. Her kids are in the city schools, one of the private schools, here. She lives in Kendallwood. I mean, it's just a powerful, group of people. And I haven't named everybody. I hope some of them can come on and introduce themselves, but it's just an amazing 10-member board. Every time I say 10 members, people are like, why would you do that to yourself? And I am very open and, excited about the work we're going to do together.
Yes, indeed. So I think that's a perfect segue, Max and Reza, to go ahead and let these good folks that were able to join us chime in. If y'all wouldn't mind, we can just go around the screen here, and if y'all want to formally build on that introduction by introducing yourself and like why you are passionate about this work and being involved on this board. So on our screen, let's start with Danyelle.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I had some Wi-Fi troubles earlier, but I'm Danyelle Honoré. I got into this work simply by being involved in the Charlottesville community. I went to undergrad at the University of Virginia, got my BA in Government and African American Studies with a minor in Public Policy. And I was trying to bring all my friends to the different city council and school board meetings and really just trying to get the UVA students involved in the community so that they're not just like serving the community, but they also feel like they can gain something from the community as well. So that's how I got to know these wonderful people on the call. And from there, I got my master's in ed policy at Harvard, worked on the Hill for a little bit, and now I am a law student at Texas A&M University School of Law.
Nice, good stuff.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us. And of course, we'll loop back around and y'all can chime in at any moment. But next on introductions, we have a lady. Y'all know this lady? Is that G? She looked familiar. No? Oh, is that G Brackney? Is that the G? What's up, G Brackney? How you doing?
You know what? I'm good. I'm doing well. Literally running from one to another. I'm actually in a conference in New Orleans right now. So when Mayor Walker is like, here's the time. And just to tell you just how God works, literally the conference I'm just leaving, Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X's daughters are keynote. So you want to talk about just bringing fire just now. And as I'm coming up here about thinking about social justice work and advocacy, that's the kind of energy I'm bringing back right now with me. And the conference I'm at is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. So we have about 2,000 Black police chiefs, colonels, majors from across the nation and the globe here to talk about criminal justice reform, talking about the impact that our policies and practices have on Black communities. And more specifically, bringing home into Charlottesville is during the time I was there, I actually could see the historical and the legacy things that have been put in place that would also continue to allow institutions of supremacy like policing to thrive at the expense of, Black communities just trying to now survive those systems. So when we came about thinking about, from the imagination of our ancestors, my commitment came from what would this look like if for the first time, as I used to talk to Mayor Walker in our positions, if we could imagine for the first time versus reimagining something for the first time. And how might our ancestors think about that when we have the full spirit of them behind us, their wind at our backs and underneath our wings. And then when we have this group here, this group is fire, as I said.
You got a power team. That's for sure.
Together. Yep. So I'm here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And next up, Jay Sean, good brother.
All right, can I still be heard all right?
Absolutely.
All right, good. So my name is Jason. I'm probably the most, the least known out of the group, just because, like Nikuyah said, I am the youngest of the group, but I do believe my accomplishments speak that I am capable of providing some necessary resources to this group. So I was the youngest ever school board member. I served on the Charles City Schools school board as a student rep for two terms, and in that role, really got to learn the backstage politics of education, and how everything is running, and how issues are tackled. It was a really eye-opening experience, and so that really led to me wanting to challenge the education system in a way that I think others have either not gained the experience to see why they should challenge like that, or they just haven't seen it as a way to tackle it. And so I think with this board, I think allows me to use my experience on the board as well as the other things I've done in the community to address it. And I think it speaks in the name as well. When we were deciding about the name, it spoke to me, the imagination for ancestors. As you guys know, we are going through a lot in our community. We have the election. We have so much political divide going on. We have so much divide in our own community besides politics going on with crime and just this feeling of hate towards each other almost in some senses. And when I think of that imagination, it allows me to go back to, what is our purpose? What is the purpose of these nonprofits that we have in Charlottesville, or what is the purpose of these community organizations that are working for us? And that is the imagination that our ancestors had to provide a better lives for each other and for their offsprings and their grandchildren and their great grandchildren, might add. And so it helps me come back to what is my purpose? Why am I fighting for what I'm fighting for? And I think that is when it is a long name, but when you do say that name out loud, and
which is not the point that I was trying to make at all.
No. Yeah, no. That is a joke, that because that is something I used to say in the meetings we were discussing the name. Yeah. But even though it is a long name, when you really think about it and you process the name, it helps you focus in on what is the true purpose of what we're fighting for in our community. So.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I think a good thing to remind folks of is, as you started off, Nikuyah, as well, you're talking about how when you were thinking about it, like it crossed y'all's mind that we already have so many nonprofits per capita. So make sure that people are clear on those pillars, on that mission, on what sets this apart.
Yeah. So the main thing is you can start with the people. So I'm here. I've made my commitment to the Black community clear. And people try to break that into like your own, the category of you are only focused on, or you're not broad enough. But we are the only group of people, even here, that are challenged to not focus on ourselves. And focusing on yourself doesn't mean that you don't care about anyone else. So I also have that track record when I was at City Hall, that when any other group came, you can see my votes. I was very supportive and very open, because people need to take care of one another. And by them taking care of themselves, we are all then better community members when we are all healthier and thriving. And so for all the people who are going to throw that out there, I have a track record on, that votes in City Hall for 4-year period about how I vote when Senboreras or, a group like that comes before us and they have needs for the Hispanic community. There was never a time that I did not advocate or did not vote when many other counselors did not, but I didn't ever ask them, or we shouldn't ask people like, why are you focusing on yourself? And in this community, Black people, and it's on our website, and I read a book last year which someone needed to give to me when I was in my teens, Faces at the Bottom of the Well. I really went into council thinking that the energy around 2017, that people were really committed to healing this community and acknowledging the racism that existed and then dismantling it by any means necessary, because that's what people were saying. And I read enough history books and wonder, like, what happened and how did they fall apart? I do now know from lived experience, but I really, of all the words, naive would not be one that people usually associated with me, but I really thought we wanted to do something different. But we're here, and Black people in this community are still being railroaded, are still being used to bring money in the community, and then it's not serving us and our needs. And we very seldom get to say what we need, and we very rarely get to challenge people on how they're not serving us well, because we don't feel like we have the authority to challenge people. And so I'm telling people that now I'm here, and if you need help in these 7 areas, but as my board knows, that people are going to call me, and I'm going because they made me narrow this down. I just want to say that. But and it is a lot, but like I do all this stuff all the time, you know. I can handle it, and we can definitely handle it together. But it's just a need. But the faces at the bottom of the well, while we're still there, and we're going to stay there because it serves people to keep us there. The other major challenge I have is, and Jason just pointed it out, I had us fighting me when I was there. I didn't talk about it a lot publicly, but that was also a challenge. So trying to figure out if I can even be of service here in the way. Do I need to leave here for a while to, get some space and then come back here? You know, Chief Brackney tells me all the time, and my mother does too. They're like, you're too big for this community. You really need to get out of here. But I have such a commitment because we see what's happening, and it's so necessary.
I'm going to stop her on that one though, y'all. Here's what I tell her all the time, that this community will not allow her to be her fullest self. This community will not allow her to serve to her full capacity, that they're going to always box her in and literally see her as one of those faces at the bottom of the well. That in order to do the work, she needs to be in bigger spaces to have larger impact in her own community. So let's make sure we put that in context, because I ain't trying to run her out of here and y'all running me out of here. Is
there any concern that the community that you will serve will also try to put this group or Mayor Walker in a box as well?
Well, one of the things that I've been focused on during the past couple of years is layers of healing. And I had to move from being angry and bitter. And some days I'm still challenged when I read something. So I'm not telling you all I have fixed anything. But one of the things that I often did was focus on, I know now, was I was focusing on the wrong things. There are so many people that I helped, so many people that I served, but because I was always ready. I remember when the former COO was here, Miss Shelton, she said, if you help, 400 people out of 1,000, you're not going to be satisfied. You need to help the whole 1,000. And I said, yeah. And she said, but you don't even take a moment to enjoy that you just got something. And that is a hard thing for me. But I would focus on the people who maybe would be in that bunch of 500, yelling and upset because whatever they need didn't happen. And, I'm a bit frustrated because I'm still working. I'm only focused on you, even though we just got this half of the group in whatever services we have. I'm learning to just focus on the people who need me, who call, and even the people who may, be loud voices in the room and want to yell, and what my work will help them and their families too. And so just focus on the work is what I hope I have learned over the past 2.5 years. And I hope I, can spend all of my energy in doing.
I have a question, if I may. When we set out to do, first off, thank every last one of y'all for what y'all are doing. I'm sure y'all hear it, but I want to make sure that I give y'all my flowers, while I can. But what do we do for the community to where we go from helping them to them being able to be self-sufficient and then reaching back to help the next person. Because what I see too often is that we condition ourselves to ask for something, and then we get upset that we don't get it in the manner that we want it to happen. So what would you urge people? How would you urge people to set their mind when you come to this great organization that y'all are building and we give you help? What is your next steps so that you can keep the ball rolling?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is a question that I actually was thinking about not too long ago. This is not a savior group, and I want to make that very, very clear.
There you go.
This is not a group that we're trying to come in and say, the Black community in Charlottesville needs a savior, needs a superhero, and that's us, and we're coming in and swooping in and helping. This is an empowerment group. This is a group that's here to empower the already excellent Black community we have in Charlottesville.
I love that.
So I'm very big on Black excellence. Very big on Black excellence because there's this stereotype that Black excellence, you have to have this college degree and you have to be this successful. No, Black excellence is in all of us. It shows in different ways. The Black community is a very vibrant community, diverse community. And so when you come to us for help, or when we come to you and say, hey, do you need such and such service or whatever, we're there with the mindset that we're here to help you. We're here to advocate for you and to empower you to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve in the situation. So we're not trying to take over any situation and say, hey, you need us and we're going to take over and lead you. We want you to lead us in the way that you want to solve this problem, but we're here as a backbone for you to encourage you in what you're trying to do.
I know why you on the board now.
Yeah. Who is that young Black Panther over that corner over there?
I
love it. That's what's up.
Yeah. So, family, we are joined by, from the imagination of our ancestors, a new activist group led by none other than the Honorable Mayor Nikuyah J. Walker. So one thing I'm noticing as well too, which you guys just touched on, the focus currently is Charlottesville, but I am noticing how you all have a wide variety of like geographical coverage here, and you also are upward mobile in your careers and like just your outlooks and your perspectives. Like, so what's the hope? Sort of, I guess you could say, sort of beyond Charlottesville. Like, do you see this as being in a bubble around Charlottesville, or do you see this work once successful comes to fruition, so to speak, being an example to where you could replicate elsewhere?
Well, we had it was what you would have read would have been a much broader originally, and then we narrowed it down to Charlottesville and Albemarle just to start. But you also have to put in the work to see where your success, like, if you can really even be successful. I know oftentimes you hear people come in and I'm sure all of us can do this work, that we have the commitment, but we need to see if some of the things that we're thinking about will actually work. We have had many conversations about even the direction that, we were going to go. If you read the website, it says a think and do tank. There was board members like Dr. Harris, who's the oldest member of our board, who has, lived 80 plus years, who's like, yeah, no, I don't know about that, often. And so he said, you have a lot of great ideas. People need to hear those. And I'm like, well, who's going to implement the ideas after, we share them? And so I wanted to do more action and wanted to see because I think sometimes, like with the previous question, there's an assumption that because all of these organizations exist, and there are some amazing people in these organizations. I used to work in quite a few of these organizations, and people often think I'm attacking the people, and I'm attempting to separate, which is often years of just neglect to the point where they cannot be of good service. Not that the people who are in those organizations didn't have good intentions, but there is some amazing work that's being done, and people who really care. I'm working with a family, and I've seen a team of therapists do some amazing work with this family. And then I've also seen some social workers from the Albemarle County Department of Social Services do horrible work, with the same family. So I'm not saying everybody, but there's definitely the assumption that because Charlottesville is so well resourced, that people should have enough services in place, that they should be in a better position. And I challenge people on that any day, because it doesn't mean just because it exists that it's happening.
Yeah, and it also being a small area, kind of to Chief Brackney's point, it like being too big for this area. One, like, to me, that feeds into the fact that it's small to the point to where we all know each other. You know what I mean? And so, and I even think about the Chief's work as well as Danyelle, being a student and bridging that gap, as well, like between being a community member, as well as in academia, right? And sometimes people feel like that we're replicating, or sometimes people feel like that we're like stepping on their territory, and easily get offended. And again, I think that happens even more so sort of in smaller towns. So is there any intentionality behind seeing what current groups fit the puzzle, like fit this puzzle, and say, yes, we should partner with them, like, in this work?
Yes, there is. There's also, I've been off the scene for almost 3 years now. And so the reason that there aren't more clear explanations on about what areas we are going to do in is because we actually need to get back out there and hear directly from people. I could make the assumption based on the few people who I've been helping over the few years, or the things that I saw beforehand, or when I used to work at Region 10 in 2007 to 2012, and I'm just, naming that organization, but that's not how any of us want, to do things. So it's actually, I may end up, and if my board says so, I may only be able to do an advocacy. There may be no room to start a thing. And that takes up, I only have a few things going on now, and that takes up a considerable amount of time. Yeah. But I also told them to just keep in mind that we will have to, if we want some of these services delivered in a way that helps heal and help family be able to move from the pit of despair into this place where we assume most people should be, no matter what they're going through, and self-sufficient and not need and able to pull other people up, which is, the goal. But first we have to talk about, why are they in those positions in the first place? Challenge people to not be in a position when the circumstances are set and aligned for them to end up in that position. And then we say, oh, I know Danyelle made it out. Why couldn't you? You don't know how Danyelle made it out. You don't know her story. You don't know her supports compared to the person who didn't. I say it all the time. One of my closest friends when we were growing up here, we lived in Garrett at the time, Friendship Port, raised our kids together. She's one of the smartest people I've ever met. Yeah. And I've met some really smart people. She just did not have the chance, the supports, and being beat up and beat down every day, she could not figure it out. I'm not going to blame her or the people like her who could not figure it out. But we are here today. And even when, when we talk about from the imagination, a lot of people don't have places to turn with people who are not saying, why aren't you already here? Versus the one who will say, where are you? Where do you want to be? Who's in your way? Let's get them out of your way so we can see if you even have a fair shot to get where you want to go. Because right now, every time you try to move, there's somebody throwing things in your path so that you trip over them.
So, Man Walker, is it, well, no, this question is for everybody here. Is it okay for us to tell these PWI institutions that you're not doing the work that you think you're doing?
Yes.
And I think that's the problem to date. Danyelle, I know you're about to jump in there. So that's the problem to date, right? That people are afraid to tell them, and even some of our own organizations, that you are not doing the work that you have committed to do, that we've given you the resources to do. And maybe your intentions were starting out well, but did you even have the capacity to do the work to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. And do we just give money out of repetition because it's so much easier to keep funding the same program over and over again? Mm-hmm. And then we create these barriers to entry for other people to get the kind of support because we say we don't have enough resources. We don't have enough capacity at that point. And I think that the key is, and I see as Danyelle's leaning in here, is here's the key. We're trying to remove obstacles and barriers. When we say from the imagination, people cannot imagine possibilities if they've never had all of those yokes taken off of them. Right? You can't imagine what you can do if you don't know how to navigate your everyday systems that you find yourself in contact with. It's really hard to imagine being a chef or a creative chef if you're hungry every day. Right? I'm like, I ain't going to culinary school. I can't even think about that when I can't even think, how do I put bread on the table because of system barriers? So we're not only thinking about the imagination of our ancestors for potential, but how do we unlock it in individuals who find themselves in collaboration with us as customers and people that we serve?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in there. Something that I grapple with, especially when I was at UVA, is that there's a culture of service. So like when you go to the university in particular, they have signs up, our students complete this many thousands hours of service each year. But one thing that pushed me into the community was that they don't actually engage. So they come and do a service. We go to the meetings, we'll go to the schools, and then we leave as though we can't engage and learn something from these people. And I think that same thing goes into academia, where when they approach the work, they approach from an intentionality or a standpoint of like they only have something to give and they don't have anything to receive on the back end. And what that does is create a power dynamic. And you're going in assuming something about these folks. And how can you truly, I don't even want to say serve, how can you truly help people when you're coming in with that power dynamic? I think that we're being intentional with having a growth mindset and also understanding that people bring their own perspectives. And like, we're not just trying to speak on their behalf. We really think that they are solution oriented as well. And so we're listening to them. And I think in academia, depending on who the institution is, it's hard to go in and have that, create that culture just based on positionality. Like it's hard to go in when you don't relate, you don't come from the same community, you don't have the same experiences, and you're going to try to tell them how to go from A to B or A to Z. It's very hard to do. And so I think we're intentional with, having a growth mindset and making sure that we are not leading them, but partnering with folks to advance them. And also, I think another piece that you all said that made me think about, we're very intentional about saying, this is about Black liberation. And I think when we partner with organizations or anything of that sort, we want to be sure that we can be fully Black and bring all of ourselves. And I think in academia, people hide some of their identities. I remember being an undergrad and students wouldn't say that their parents were incarcerated. And I think that's hiding some of their identity. They should be able to show up in a space and say like, hey, I'm representing so-and-so here. And, yes, I'm a college student at a PWI, but also my so-and-so is incarcerated. And that doesn't make me any less human. That doesn't make my experience any less valuable. And until we are able to not have shame with all that comes with us, whether good or bad, or however that is perceived, I think we're going to have barriers. So just being intentional about allowing people to be fully Black, whatever that means.
Okay. I want to give you all a little more time to kind of elaborate on, I guess, what might be called your tenets or areas of advocacy. I'm particularly interested in the local government oversight. So when you imagine what our ancestors envisioned for these type of things, what will work look like in that area in particular, but feel free to elaborate on all the others.
So as I said before, that was a little more broad. Jason was actually the one who said, we need to bring this to like our community and put, narrow this down some. So he's been holding us to what are you going to do? How are we going to, can't do everything, do a little. He's been helping us with that. I've been a little surprised. I thought that may come from someone a little bit, but he's been the one, older than him, but he's been the one. And it's an amazing thing. I want to say that first, to have a board that is, as I said, from an 18-year-old to an 80-year-old, everyone in between that, and to get the wisdom that comes from all of those years. Like, we have been 18 before, but we haven't been 18 in 2024, right? So a lot of times we forget that, like, what you bring to the table. And again, you were born 80 years ago. None of us on this call was here then. You have that wisdom, and then you're still here today to share, which he does. I wish he was on here. But I'm sure you all know Dr. Harris. And the expertise in housing that he brings, and commitment to making sure that we're not displaced, is why he's on the board, if I haven't said that. But the local government piece, and that also rolls into advocating to make sure people are getting the services they need. Having just been in that position, and having been an activist before having been in that position, and been downtown at City Hall and advocating for some changes and trying to force them. I know how stagnant the thought process of individuals who are not necessarily affected by the policies that they created, or maybe somebody created 3 decades ago that they haven't looked at again, but that is still very much, affecting people. And the role that plays in, the decisions they make, the role that plays in Black people's lives in Charlottesville, whether we are still a part of the community or whether we're pushed out of the community. One of the most important things that is really hard, to pay attention to, just because it's just very time consuming, and sometimes people are intentionally being deceptive, so you're not getting the information you need, is the budget at City Hall. And so even if people don't want to get assistance from us, like, nobody knows to come and ask an organization, is the city doing the best by us when they vote on the budget every year? Who is in there advocating? What we see now is that we have different organizations who come in and advocate for, it was a little over $1 million when I was there, formerly ABRT, Vibrant Community Funding. And that's all you're paying attention to. There are hundreds of more millions of dollars that you need to be paying attention to. But what they do is, and I'm not anyone currently there has done this intentionally, but just over time, I'm going to take that back. But I'm going to move on. What they do is people focus on that $1 million, let's say, then it's this whole $350 million. It's more than that, but this whole other chunk of money that nobody's paying attention to. And so what my time on council definitely taught me is that you need to pay attention to all of the dollars. Absolutely. You also need to pay attention to a lot that's happening internally, especially in areas that these 7 areas and beyond. And so there's a city department and ultimately the council and the city manager that need to be challenged annually, and looking at their 5-year plan, things like that, to make sure that we are not an afterthought. And that's what's happening now. And because people get that $1 million, they forget. They don't even show up until that part of the meeting, the meeting. And so my hope is that we help them understand where all this other money is going and how going to these other places impact you. But also trying to force the conversation in, this is where it should be going. Because I learned while I was there, when they would say, oh, no, we can't do anything. You probably won't be able to do anything your whole term because of our prior commitments. Oh, you're about to move some of this around. I'm not waiting until my 5th year, which doesn't exist, to ask, you know. And so it's very important that we understand, like, you're going to have to, and right now I'm thinking of the group impact. We have a group that's primarily citizens from the white community who are, and I mean, I don't know if you all ever been to an impact meeting, but they are intense. Okay. But they go in, they pick one focal point a year and they just kind of hammer. And I'm telling you, like, you feel like they're knocking you in the head with it. And it's good things. But nobody says to them, oh, if your approach, if you ask me more nicely, if you give me some time to work on it, they're like, this is our goal. Fix it by December 31st. And that's And we need to understand that we need to demand not just crumbs from Albemarle and the city of Charlottesville, but they need to do better. It's not just budget. One of the cases I'm working on now, as I said, is with their DSS and Human Services Department. And I've been very disappointed. Not that it matters to them. I'll just put it out there. And everybody from their board of supervisors, the county manager, the head of the services and their social services department. No one in all of those areas have done the right thing in this case. And it is a case that was overturned at the circuit court level. So their department said they were doing the right thing. Their lawyers said it was the right thing. General District Court said they was doing the right thing. The state of Virginia said they were doing the right thing. And I know because I was helping the family navigate them. And then finally in circuit court, someone looked at it and said, you all did not do the right thing. I have court transcripts to anybody who want to challenge me on that. So it exists. So in a case like that, when you're talking about advocacy, by the time I came in to helping this mom, she is done. I mean, she has no energy. She has no fight in her. She doesn't think she has any control over her life. They've stripped her kids from her. So in a point like that, you can't expect someone to bootstrap it, fix it themselves. They don't know how to navigate these systems that's set up to target and destroy them.
So real quick before I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do, there's two other areas of advocacy that I'm particularly interested in. So time served citizens, and then housing, of course, jumps out. And Charlottesville's dealing with the homelessness population. How you guys plan on getting work done there?
So the time served space is, again, we cannot answer specifics here at this time because it's still very much an ongoing debate among us about what that looks like. And I'm not being, I'm being real. They're like, you cannot do all this stuff. So I just want to say that. But there was Home to Hope program I created at the city while I was there. I had so many more ideas for Home to Hope than what I was able to do. We started, the pandemic hit. Just a year or so after the pandemic hit, I'm out of there, right? At the end of 2021. So just thinking around where I was going there would be an area that we would explore and how to grow that into what I had imagined it to be. And there were so many more layers, to know.
So it still exists and still growing, correct? Or has it? No.
It does still exist. I have not been, and they are definitely a group that I would connect with to see what's happening. And when I meet with the city, ultimately that's the deputy city manager that's under her portfolio. So I will definitely be setting up a conversation about that. But ultimately, where it was left when I left, there were so many more things that you could build on with it.
Gotcha. And what was the other one, Max?
Housing,
right?
Yeah.
Time serving housing.
Housing. So housing, and I'll try to be brief. A letter that I sent out last week, and the end of July, I was at the CRHA meeting advocating for Black people to just understand where they are on the housing list. And this is just like public housing, right? I sent and worked with Sunshine or talked with made suggestions to last year. With him, some of the things that were going on at Kindlewood and the development there. So I've been still very much involved. Like I told you all, I'm behind the scenes, but I've still been very much involved. But there are areas for improvement in those. Outside of that, if you are what our AMI is about $24,000 a year in the city of Charlottesville. You all see these rising home prices. We were talking about home ownership opportunities on available land, keeping projects like Kindlewood lower income, not putting market rate units on an area that's already very diverse. The only reason you would suggest to put market rate units on that land is because you don't want the people who currently occupy it there. So those are the type of things from an advocacy realm. I have a lot of ideas in the do realm. It's one of the areas that I am probably most passionate about and hope that I get approval for. So hopefully I can come back, and share that if I do get the approval for there. But we're not going to be here. That's the bottom line. At the current rate, you're going to have very few people being able to live in this area. There's a house up the street from me, $785,000 right now. That's insane. The house across the street from me sold in 2023 for $405,000. The individual that brought it came here to go to the JAG school. He paid cash. He had a 1-year contract. He left, went to Florida, and now is renting it out to people in that program. We have to just understand if we are going to be citizens of Charlottesville, or are we going to be looking at plaques being put up saying we used to be citizens?
Right, exactly.
So as time is winding down, any parting comments from you, Mayor Walker, or any of your board members? Thank you so much for joining us today. This is exciting.
Yeah, and as she said, we just have a minute left. But I would like to preface, if anybody's wondering what to say, this is an election year. I'm curious if you all have talked about lobbying or like presenting a Black agenda. Right. As far as, because I imagine nonprofit, nonpartisan, but as far as just your stances when it comes to encouraging and informing people in election years, if anybody wants to touch that.
So I'm one of the few that probably can touch that and just be very careful about it. Here's what we say. You're right. We're nonpartisan, but here's what we're going to say to you. You have a lot of privileges and rights that the community, that the greater institutions of voting don't want us to exercise, right? So I don't care who you vote for. Personally, I do care, but forward facing, I don't care. But here's what I do. Every time I go out and vote, I literally take a picture of myself that says I just voted with a t-shirt that says, vote like your ancestors died for it. And that's how I feel about, we do have an election. And if we're talking about what our ancestors have given for us to, and what they have survived for us to be here, then we have no choice but to honor them in every way we can, including to go out there and fight so that our young folks, our young adults, I mean, the two amazing individuals that we have on here that make me feel aged every time I'm on here, we have no choice but to make sure that we exercise everything that our ancestors would have imagined that we could do and be.
And to understand an organization like ours is being a threat to not exist. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do that, but they're fighting the Fearless Fund right now, who does venture capital, raise funds to give Black women loans. And they had already expanded it to women of color. It wasn't just Black women, even though Black women started it. And as soon as that affirmative action case was lost last year, the next case that same individual brought was against the Fearless Fund to not be able to give loans to Black businesses to start up. So that people need to understand, if the person you're voting for is an attack on, again, what your ancestors, even if they silently fed the movement from behind, however they participated, they loved you enough to want you to not be in bondage. And you have to be real clear about if your vote or what people are actually doing, that you are supporting, it's important for you to understand that this is not simply just a normal you go vote or not vote or the best of the worst or, you know, whatever people are saying. You really have to understand what's been at stake since President Obama was elected, and all of the people that came out because they did not want the democracy that they felt he was a threat. So again, you vote, because we're nonpartisan, vote for, but you need to understand the position that people are presenting to you.
Thank you. Yeah. And we are up against the end of the show, but any final word, you know, we can give 30 seconds each. Anybody have any other final words, or we good? Because y'all represent it well, right?
Sure.
Appreciate y'all.
I really appreciate you all for allowing us to come to the community. You know, this is very much a startup. There's nothing started, but there was a perfect commitment to make sure that we honored the community in thinking about what we could offer.
Right.
Thank you. And is the website ready to be shared?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The website is spelled out very long from the it's 32 characters. Ask me how many times I went over that. Right. www.fromtheimaginationofourancestors.org.
Okay.
The imagination of our ancestors. All right. Well, thank y'all.
Yeah. Thank you for your
work. Very much. And until next time, please keep us posted.
Yeah, thank you.
You will. Till our paths cross again.
Right. Take care.
IMHO Talk Show.